Ladies and gentlemen, at the very beginning of the panel discussion, we will be switching between Polish and English, while the language of the panel discussion itself will be English. My name is Marek Tejchman. I'm Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Dziennik Gazeta Prawna, and it's a great honor for me to host the panel discussion about rebuilding Ukraine and looking for the business opportunities and business needs of the Ukrainian business elites and business life, and the way that Polish state, Polish institutions, Polish companies, and Polish financial market can be a help for the benefit of both sides. The partner of the panel, the people who made it happen, is the bank Pekao SA, and let me invite on the stage Leszek, Skiba, the CEO of the bank, who will invite the keynote speaker. Mr. Skiba.
Thank you very much. Dziękuję bardzo. Nasz panel będzie rozpoczęty przemówieniem pana premiera. Panie premierze, oddaję głos.
Dzień dobry Państwu. To niezwykle ważne, żeby w takim miejscu jak Davos, gdzie dzisiaj można powiedzieć bije gospodarcze serce świata, rozmawiać o tych problemach, które dzisiaj są najważniejsze. A dzisiaj rosyjska inwazja, agresja na Ukrainę, tragedia, która rozgrywa się w centrum Europy, to jest ten temat, o którego nie można przejść obojętnie.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today at Davos, which is the economic heart of the world right now, there is one topic we definitely have to talk about, which is a key topic for Europe, and this is the topic of the Russian invasion, the Russian aggression against Ukraine. This is a tragedy which is unfolding in the center of Europe, and we have to talk about it.
Dzisiaj kolejny tragiczny dzień, który pociąga za sobą tragiczne ofiary tej zbrodniczej operacji wojskowej, jak nazywają to na Kremlu, a właściwie powinno się mówić brutalnej, zbrodniczej agresji przeciwko Ukrainie. Proszę pozwolić, że zanim przejdę do zasadniczej części swojej wypowiedzi na ręce przedstawiciela władz Ukrainy, pana Oleksandra Rodnyańskiego, doradcy pana prezydenta Zełenskiego, serdecznie pana witam na tym panelu, złożę kondolencje. Zginęli ważni przedstawiciele władz Ukrainy walczącej z rosyjską agresją, zginęły dzieci, zginęły niewinne ofiary. Dość tych ofiar, musimy zrobić wszystko, aby ta wojna skończyła się jak najszybciej, skończyła się porażką agresora, a zwycięstwem narodu ukraińskiego, który walczy o swoją godność, swoją wolność i swoją przyszłość.
Ladies and gentlemen, today was another tragic day for Ukraine with more victims, and these are the results of the criminal military operation. This is the name that the Kremlin is using. In fact, it's a brutal invasion and aggression against Ukraine. And there have been many victims before, but today I would like to extend my especially warm condolences to all the Ukrainian friends and to Mr. Alain, who is the advisor to President Zelensky. Today, more people died. Today, the representatives of the Ukrainian authorities died, but also children and other people. And we have to say enough is enough. We have to do all we can to make sure that this Russian invasion fails and that the Ukrainian people who are fighting for their freedom and their dignity prevail.
Szanowni Państwo, przewodnie hasło Polskiego Domu tutaj w Davos to most do wolności. Tym mostem do wolności jest i chce być Polska. Chce być mostem do wolności w wielu tego słowa wymiarach, ale w tym miejscu i w tym momencie musimy powiedzieć to też bardzo wyraźnie. Chcemy być mostem do wolności dla Ukrainy. Chcemy być i jesteśmy tym krajem, który sprzeciwia się rosyjskiej agresji, chce być ambasadorem Ukrainy, chce zrobić wszystko, aby Ukraińcy dostali dzisiaj realną pomoc, a rosyjski agresor poczuł, co oznacza gniew wolnego i demokratycznego świata.
Ladies and gentlemen, The main slogan of the Polish House here in Davos is a bridge to freedom, and Poland wants to be that bridge to freedom, not just for ourselves, but also for Ukraine. We are the country that is very much against the Russian invasion, and we want to be Ukraine's ambassadors to the rest of the world. And we want definitely to see Ukraine prevail and succeed against this invasion as a free country.
Polska jest krajem, który od bardzo długiego czasu nie miał żadnej wątpliwości co do charakteru reżimu Władimira Putina. Byliśmy tymi, którzy mówiliśmy naszym partnerom w zachodniej Europie, w Ameryce o tym, że nie wolno Rosji Putina traktować jako normalnego uczestnika gry międzynarodowej. Nie można traktować Rosji jako wiarygodnego partnera gospodarczego i politycznego, jako państwa, które szanuje pokój, szanuje wolność innych narodów, które trzyma się reguł demokratycznego świata.
And for a long time now, Poland and the representatives of the Polish authorities have been saying to our partners in the West and in Europe that the regime of Vladimir Putin cannot be treated as an ordinary country. This is not a country that plays according to international rules. It's not a credible partner, both in economy and in politics. And it is not a country that respects the principles, the underlying principles of peace, sovereignty and independence of what we are used to in democracies.
Jako były współpracownik świętej pamięci prezydenta Lecha Kaczyńskiego pamiętam doskonale słowa, które prezydent Lech Kaczyński wypowiedział w Tbilisi, które stało się Gruzja, która stała się w stolicy Gruzji, która w 2008 roku stała się ofiarą rosyjskiej agresji. Dzisiaj tamte słowa wielokrotnie są przypominane. Te słowa, które przewidywały, że jeśli rosyjska agresja w Gruzji ujdzie Rosji na sucho, reżim Putina się nie zatrzyma, że następna będzie Ukraina, kraje bałtyckie, a potem być może Polska.
As a person who cooperated very closely with the late president of Poland, Lech Kaczynski, I remember his memorable words that he said in Tbilisi, in Georgia, back in 2008, when Georgia fell victim to Russian aggression. And these words are very often reminded today, when the president said that if the Russian aggression remained unchecked, then Russia would not stop. And he said Ukraine would be next, the Baltic states would be next, and then perhaps also Poland would be next.
Dzisiaj te słowa brzmią proroczo, ale przypomnijmy, że wtedy większość elit rządzących Europy albo szerzej świata nie chciało ich słuchać. Uważało, że to tylko przejaw antyrosyjskiej fobii, jak mówiono. Przejaw jakiegoś niezrozumiałego dla innych dystansu wobec Rosji i jakiegoś niezrozumiałej dla innej dziwnej oceny rosyjskich władz i rosyjskiej polityki.
Right now, when we look at these words, we understand that they have come true. But back in the day, the elites, especially in the West and globally as well, did not want to listen to these words. And they very often said that this was an expression of some sort of a Polish anti-Russian phobia, and that in a way we are distancing ourselves from Russia, and they didn't understand why.
Wielka szkoda, że wtedy nie posłuchano tych słów, bo dzisiaj prawdopodobnie tragedia na Ukrainie nie miałaby miejsca. Jeśli wtedy skutecznie powstrzymano by rosyjską agresję, być może udałoby się uniknąć tragedii Ukrainy i Ukraińców.
And it's a shame that those words were not heeded back then, because maybe if the Russian aggression against Georgia had been stopped, then today Ukraine would not have to be undergoing its own tragedy.
I trzeba też to dzisiaj powiedzieć w tym miejscu, że wszyscy ci, którzy relatywizowali tamtą agresję i jej skutki, którzy próbowali tłumaczyć albo szukać jakichś racjonalnych elementów w polityce Putina, są również współodpowiedzialni za to, co dzisiaj dzieje się na Ukrainie.
And it has to be made very clear and emphasized that all those people who try to relativize Putin's aggression against Georgia and try to find reasons and explanations for it, they are also partly responsible for today's tragedy in Ukraine.
Historia już wielokrotnie udowodniła, że próby obłaskiwania agresora zawsze kończą się tak samo. Zawsze oznaczają zachętę do kolejnej agresji, do kolejnych podbojów, do kolejnych wojen. Szkoda, że tak wielu polityków, w tak wielu ważnych krajach nie potrafiło się nauczyć niczego z historii, nie potrafiło wyciągnąć wniosków. Dzisiaj powinni zdobyć się na rachunek sumienia.
And history teaches us that appeasement is never the way forward with aggressors. If you try to appease them, they will always be encouraged and they will go on with more aggression, more conquest and more war. And it's a shame that these lessons from history were not learned by many politicians in many countries in the past. And if that had happened, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in at the moment. So they should listen to that and they should check that now.
Od 24 lutego ubiegłego roku taka polityka nie może już być w żaden sposób zrozumiana i rozgrzeszana. I Polska jest tym krajem, który od pierwszego momentu wskazuje na to, że dzisiaj trzeba przede wszystkim skupić się na pomocy Ukrainie. Trzeba dać Ukraińcom możliwość skutecznego odparcia rosyjskiej agresji, a to oznacza dostawy broni, nowoczesnego uzbrojenia, bo inaczej jak nowoczesnym uzbrojeniem nie wygrywa się wojen. To oznacza daleko idące sankcje i nacisk na reżim Putina, ale to oznacza również daleko idącą pomoc humanitarną dla cierpiących Ukraińców, zarówno tych, którzy byli zmuszeni opuścić swoją ojczyznę i znaleźli swoje miejsce, swój nowy dom w Polsce, ale również dla tych, którzy pozostali tam na Ukrainie i dzisiaj borykają się z ogromnymi problemami wynikającymi z działań rosyjskiego agresora.
Since the 24th of February 2022, these attitudes that I mentioned cannot be explained anymore. And right now, Poland has been saying, and we are emphasizing it again from the very beginning of the invasion, that our main task is to help Ukraine defend itself. We need to provide Ukraine with modern military equipment because it is the only way we can ensure their victory. Secondly, sanctions and the increased pressure on Putin's regime. And thirdly, humanitarian aid for the Ukrainians who have left their country and for those who have stayed in Ukraine and are now suffering as a result of the Russian aggression.
Chciałem złożyć w tym miejscu stanowczą deklarację w imieniu polskiego rządu, że z tej politycznej drogi nie zejdziemy. Będziemy tą politykę, która charakteryzuje naszą polską odpowiedź wobec rosyjskiej agresji kontynuować i będziemy zachęcać wszystkie państwa, naszych sojuszników i wszystkie państwa demokratycznego świata, żeby przyjąć podobną postawę, żeby dzisiaj użyć wszelkich środków do tego, aby Ukraina mogła się obronić, aby Ukraina mogła zachować swoją niepodległość i dołączyć do grona demokratycznych krajów świata.
Right now, on behalf of the Polish government, let me say that we will definitely stay on this path as the Polish government and the Polish state. This is the Polish answer to the Russian aggression, and this will continue. We will keep talking to our partners in democratic countries around the world and our allies, and encouraging them to do the same. And we all want to make sure that Ukraine can defend itself, defend its independence, and join the democratic part of the world.
Na tym się dzisiaj skupiamy i musimy skupiać, bo to jest dzisiaj najważniejsze i w tym sensie Polska jest właśnie tym mostem do wolności, tym mostem, przez który mają płynąć na Ukrainę te niezbędne środki do prowadzenia wojny i do wsparcia narodu ukraińskiego, ale z drugiej strony tym mostem w drugą stronę, przez który Ukraińcy będą w stanie przemaszerować do realizacji swoich euroatlantyckich i europejskich aspiracji.
Now, right now we have to stay focused. We have to keep focusing on these things that I have mentioned. And in this respect, Poland wants to be this bridge to freedom. First of all, we want to be the bridge across which support and aid for Ukraine keeps flowing. And secondly, in the future, we want to be the bridge for Ukraine to march towards the fulfillment of its Euro-Atlantic and European aspirations.
Jesteśmy przekonani, że tak jak zawsze to bywało w historii, agresja i totalitaryzm muszą przegrać. I jesteśmy przekonani, że i tym razem tak będzie, że przy wsparciu całego demokratycznego świata Ukraina się obroni, a rosyjski agresor poniesie klęskę. I dlatego dzisiaj również chcemy wybiegać w przyszłość. Chcemy dzisiaj już szukać odpowiedzi na to, jak wesprzeć Ukrainę, jak wspomóc Ukrainę i Ukraińców w trudnym czasie powojennym.
As always, we believe that aggression and the totalitarian regimes will fail in the end. And right now we have to talk with the rest of the democratic world about not just helping Ukraine to defend itself, but also we have to start thinking about the future, how we can support Ukraine in its reconstruction after the war.
Codziennie widzimy na ekranach telewizorów i w doniesieniach agencji skalę zniszczeń. Skalę zniszczeń, która dotyczy podstawowej infrastruktury niezbędnej do funkcjonowania państwa, infrastruktury energetycznej, infrastruktury drogowej, przemysłowej, ale również, co najbardziej chyba bolesne, dotyczy ukraińskich miast, dotyczy tej przestrzeni, w której żyją ludzie.
Every day, as we watch the news and read news outlets, we can see the sheer scale of destruction that befalls Ukraine. We can see the destruction of the basic fundamental infrastructure in terms of energy infrastructure, roads, industry, but perhaps most painfully, we see the destruction of the Ukrainian cities, the places where the Ukrainians live.
Odbudowa zniszczeń wojennych to nie jest coś, co może spocząć tylko i wyłącznie na barkach Ukraińców. Żaden kraj nie jest w stanie sam podnieść się z ruin, nie jest w stanie sam wyrównać tak wielkich strat, jakie Rosjanie zadali w ostatnich miesiącach Ukrainie.
Now, this is not just a task for Ukraine itself. A single country cannot hope to rebuild itself quickly after this scale of destruction, so we cannot hope that Ukraine can rise from the terrific ruin caused by the Russian aggression alone.
Dlatego od wielu miesięcy rozmawiamy o tym, jak zorganizować skuteczną pomoc, jak zorganizować pieniądze, know-how, jak zachęcić firmy z całego świata do tego, aby dzisiaj już planowały swoje działania tak, aby w momencie, kiedy wojna się zakończy, jak najszybciej przystąpić do wielkiego dzieła odbudowy. Jestem niezwykle dumny z tego, że w tych dyskusjach, planach, opracowaniach uczestniczą również polskie firmy. Polskie firmy, zarówno te państwowe, a to największe polskie przedsiębiorstwa, jak i te prywatne.
Right now, we have been talking for many months now about how to help Ukraine after the war as well. We need to raise the financing for that, so we have to bring in the know-how, and we are already encouraging companies from all over the world to start planning ahead for the moment the war is over and when the reconstruction can start, to make sure that it progresses as fast as possible. And on behalf of Poland, let me say that we want for Polish companies to participate in this process as well. We have some of the largest Polish companies that are state-owned companies and also private companies that are interested in taking part.
Ministerstwo Aktywów Państwowych, którym kieruję, przygotowało wraz z Ministerstwem Rozwoju wielki plan udziału polskich firm w odbudowie Ukrainy. Zebraliśmy zgłoszenia ze strony polskich firm, obszary, w których mogłyby być przydatne w tym wielkim dziele odbudowy. Przygotowaliśmy cały plan. Wiemy, co robić. Chcemy wspomóc Ukrainę i Ukraińców nie tylko w czasie wojny, ale również w czasie pokoju i pokojowej odbudowy. Bardzo dziękuję za to, że dzisiaj możemy tutaj na Forum Ekonomicznym w Davos o tym rozmawiać, bo to bardzo ważny temat.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the head of the Ministry of State Assets, in collaboration with the Ministry of Development, we have prepared a plan for the Polish business and Polish companies to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine after the war. We have contacted many companies, we have brought in different ideas and collected information on the different areas of expertise. And right now, thanks to this plan, we know what to do and we know how we can help Ukraine after the war, not just during the fighting, but also when the reconstruction starts. And I'm very happy that this venue gives us an opportunity to talk about it.
Ta dyskusja, która za chwilę tutaj będzie miała miejsce, ona jest ważna w dwóch obszarach. Jeszcze w obszarze praktycznym. Zbliży nas do tego, aby mieć takie pełne przekonanie, że jesteśmy przygotowani do tego, aby odbudować Ukrainę. Ale równie ważny dzisiaj jest ten, myślę, psychologiczny wymiar tej dyskusji. To, że dziś rozmawiamy o odbudowie Ukrainy po wojnie, to dowód na to, że głęboko wierzymy, że ta wojna zakończy się klęską Rosji, a zwycięstwem Ukrainy. Że my w Polsce w to wierzymy, ale że wierzy w to Europa i wierzy cały demokratyczny świat. i że nikt dzisiaj nie obstawia sukcesu polityki Władimira Putina, polityki zbrodni i agresji.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have two areas that we are talking about here right now, and we will be talking during the panel. The first area is the practical aspect of what we can and should do and how we can prepare for the post-war reconstruction of Ukraine. But the other area is equally important, and I would say it's more of a psychological area, because what we're talking about is the post-war reconstruction of a country, and we're talking about it because we strongly believe that Russia will be defeated, that Ukraine will win, and there will be this post-war reconstruction. Right now, there is nobody in Poland, in Europe, or indeed in the whole democratic world who believes otherwise. We all expect Putin's criminal aggression to fail and for Ukraine to win.
Szczególnie dziękuję bankowi Pekao S.A., który jest inicjatorem tej dyskusji, a jako jeden z dwóch największych polskich banków również przygotowuje się do tego, aby uczestniczyć w tym wielkim procesie, który myślę już rychło jest przed nami. Dziękuję panu prezesowi Leszkowi Skibie, widzę tutaj obecnych panów prezesów, wiceprezesów, również Jerzego Kwiecińskiego, Pawła Strączyńskiego, wszystkim, którzy przyczynili się do tego, że ta dyskusja dzisiaj będzie mogła mieć miejsce. Życzę dobrych obrad z takim przekonaniem, że to jest wielkie wyzwanie, które przed nami stoi, wyzwanie epokowe, wyzwanie historyczne, które pokaże, że te siły dobra, które zgromadziły się na tej sali, ale które przecież są znacznie większe niż ta sala może pomieścić, są tymi siłami, które zwyciężą. Na ręce pana doradcy chciałem zaś kończąc złożyć życzenia zwycięstwa dla całego narodu ukraińskiego. Patrzymy na was z podziwem, patrzymy z podziwem na waszą walkę, na waszą determinację, na waszą nieugiętość, na waszą miłość do wolności. Myślę, że dzisiaj ta wasza walka tak tragiczna jest też natchnieniem dla narodów świata i jest takim również dowodem na to, jak często wolność jest droga, jak prawdziwe jest powiedzenie, że wolność nie jest dana raz na zawsze i wymaga często wielkich ofiar. Życzymy, aby te ofiary nie poszły na marne. Jesteśmy przekonani, że tak będzie, że Ukraina zwycięży. Bardzo wam tego życzymy i jesteśmy gotowi pomóc wam w tym wielkim dziele. Dziękuję bardzo.
I would like to extend my thanks to the president of Pekao S.A., Mr. Leszek Skiba, and his team for organizing this debate. This is one of the two biggest Polish banks, and they're also preparing to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine. And I thank you for that very much. Right now, I think we are sure that we realize that being given freedom is not something we can take for granted. These are very historic moments, and we are showing to the world that the forces of good will prevail. And sometimes we have to realize that the cost of freedom is very high. It never comes free. And that's why when we look at our Ukrainian friends, we look at them with admiration for their fight, for their determination, resilience, and for this love of freedom that shows how costly it can sometimes be. We are sure that Ukraine will prevail and we will be supporting you. Thank you.
Niech żyje wolna Ukraina.
Long live free Ukraine.
And the question to the Ukrainian guests, because Mr. Sasin was referring to the name, to the lead sentence of the Polish House over here in Davos, Bridge to Freedom, and he was pointing out that this bridge to freedom is as well the bridge to the Euro-Atlantic ambition, the European integration ambition of Ukraine. So, what are the pillars of this bridge on the Ukrainian side? What should we do to strengthen the pillars? What should we do to help Ukrainian business leads, Ukrainian economy, Ukrainian entrepreneurs? What are the actions that we should do right now? And what are the actions that we should do for the longer term to strengthen this construction, to build that bridge? Mr. Rodnyansky.
Sure. So thanks a lot for the question. Thanks for the invitation. First of all, I have to say, A tremendous thank you to Poland, to the Polish people for all the support that they have given Ukraine in this situation. I really have to say this is unprecedented. Poland is our #1 ally, and we will never forget what Poland has sacrificed for Ukraine, both militarily, economically, and humanitarianly. So really, that's something I have to start with. Now, turning to the question, we can split this into a short-term to a long-term perspective, and then by area. So the short-term perspective, what does Ukraine need right now? That is really just, again, militarily. We need maximum military support. And I say this not just because we're in the middle of a war, but because military support is the #1 economic stimulus that we can get right now in a wartime economy. And you don't have to go very far to understand it. I mean, intuitively, we've seen what Russia has done to our energy infrastructure through these airstrikes. And if we had, perfectly 100% secure airspace with perfect air defense, none of this would have happened, and our economy wouldn't be contracting by however many percent it's now contracting, 30 to 40. We don't know the final numbers. But we know for sure that ever since our energy infrastructure was, diminished in its capacity, our economy took a huge blow. So everything else that we think is important in the long run, which is the strengthening of institutions, economic freedom more generally, more broadly, rule of law, transformation to democratic and functional institutions, as well as some, deregulation, reforms in the labor market space, and so on and so forth, financial freedom. All of that has become almost secondary now when we're in a wartime economy. But once we are out of a wartime economy and once we're victorious, it will become primary again for the terms of the economic stimulus that we will need to then integrate with the EU. So that's what I would say.
And that means both money and expertise in a way of spending the money.
Of course. So, I mean, when we talk about money, there's, again, different issues to consider. Broadly defined, there's a short-term perspective, and that's everything to do with our financial support that we're getting now. So the 18 billion euros that have been committed by the EU, for example, the 3 billion have already reached us as the first tranche in this year. So that's the short-term perspective, and that's the money. Then there's the money in the long-term perspective after the war, everything that we need for the recovery and the reconstruction effort. There's various estimates. I don't want to go into them right now because they're constantly changing, but we're talking about hundreds of billions, that's for sure. Just in terms of infrastructure destruction, but it's not just infrastructure, not just physical infrastructure, it's also social, intangible infrastructure and capital. It's everything to do with indirect costs of war, so that's going to be happening over the years.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kravchenko, what are the needs of the Ukrainian businesses? What are the needs of the Ukrainian economy?
Now, just a little bit building on what Oleksandr said, I'll come back to the numbers. So there are different estimates. World Bank made this assessment of damages in July, 350 billion. Ukraine presented recovery plan in Lugano, 750 billion. So just for you to compare, the whole Marshall Plan post-World War II in today's money was $150 billion. So we are talking needs about 5 times easily X of Marshall Plan. So now, of course, private money will play and should play a very important role. And it's not only alternative, very important source of funds, but as you said also, it's bringing know-how. Ukraine will not be able to absorb this money. So if you look on the history, the FDI per year maximum level was about 10, slightly more than 10 billion. And now we're talking about 100 billion. So foreign capital and foreign direct investment will be critical to bring know-how, capabilities, supply chains just to absorb these funds. The second is also if you think about one of the important purposes of the whole recovery should be, in my view, to reintegrate Ukrainian economy into global supply chains, because that's how you can make sure sustainable impact, and this also cannot be done without private capital. So private capital is absolutely critical. So if we think about where money is needed now, both private and public, so of course now it's more about resilience, right? So we're talking about debottlenecking logistics after blockade of Black Sea, we're talking about energy security, we're talking about trade finance, things like this. Now, of course, over time, the whole recovery should probably switch towards more growth agenda. And we're talking about, agriculture, IT being discussed. I do also have strong position that what I call decarbonization enabling sectors can play an important role. We're talking about energy, we're talking about critical materials, we're talking about machinery. So just, if I may, and I think, so we're thinking about it, it's not for me 0 to 1, from resilience to growth. I think it's continuum, and I think it's exactly actual role of like financial sector and also like donors and IFIs to accelerate this transition from like taking more and more risk gradually and like accelerate transition from like really supporting business as is to start growing. And we see already now there are some projects which have been happening in Ukraine, like growing, supporting growth of the economy.
Let me repeat it and ask whether I understood it well. Both you pointed out that the direct military help is needed right now to stop the aggression, to secure the Ukrainian energy sector, to keep the damage low. But one thing that requires instant investment right now is the connection. It is connection with the energy sector, it is connection with the natural gas sector, making sure that the natural gas is coming in and coming out. It is railway connections. I saw Mr. Sadowy over here, the mayor of Lvov. We need more connections between Rzeszów and Lvov. We need more connections between Romania and southern Ukraine to allow the transport of goods. So these are the investments that needs to be done right now. And then we need the capacity to reintegrate Ukrainian economy in the global supply chain, as you said. And to do this, we need the expertise, we need the help, we need the help with the correct way of spending money. Is it more or less correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would probably also add to the immediate needs also trade finance to support businesses flowing. Yeah?
And when we talk about these, the role of the financial institutions, because we have a lot of financial institutions over here, then there is a question of what kind of help is being done and what should be done. The question to EBRD, which is active in Ukraine right now and have huge expertise in helping to reconstruct the economies globally. Mr. Pilloux, the question to you. What is the role of the financial institutions? What are the expertise that institutions like EBRD can give to the reconstruction of economy? What of rebuilding the Ukrainian economy? What should be done to the bigger extent, in your view?
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me, Leszek. I'm so happy to be with Polish and Ukrainian friends today. I was in Kiev, as you may know, at the end of October, and I could see with my own eyes the courage of the Ukrainian people. So it's extraordinary. And also how much, the Ukrainian authorities are rising, to the challenge of managing the war and managing an economy in wartime. What is needed and what are we doing? I want to be very precise. What is needed, first of all, I remember the last sentence by President Zelensky when I met him was, we have to fight through the winter. And this is very important, of course. One thing is money in order to close the budget gap. So this is now coming more predictably than before, essentially from the US and from the EU. 1.5 billion euro each every month. And this is going to be quite predictable this year, contrary to last year where it was a little bit random, as you know. So this is being done. These are checks to the Minister of Finance in order to pay the salaries, in order to pay the pensions, in order to pay the social transfers. So it's very important, otherwise the economy would collapse. Secondly, and this is what we are doing at EBRD, we need to look at the real economy. Because if you fill only the budget gap and you don't care about the real economy, at the end of the day, what you put in the budget is not going to be that useful. So this is what we have done, and despite of the war, we have managed to invest in the country 1.7 billion euros last year, and I want to tell you where it has gone. It is very precise. Trade facilitation. We have issued 400 million of guarantees in order to promote the trade between Ukraine and other countries, in particular imports. Gas. We have put 500 million euros into Naftogaz, 300 on our own account, and 200, which is a Norwegian grant, in order for Naftogaz to buy gas. The money has been used extremely well, actually, and hopefully we will do a second round at some point in order to prepare the next winter. Ukrenergo. First of all, we injected 150 million euros with them, and after the trip to Kiev, which coincided with the Russian attacks, as you remember, we have injected another 300 million euros for the urgent repairs to the grid, to the substations, and we mobilized 72 million euros from the Netherlands in order to add to these 300. Railways, we injected 150 million euros, and now we are preparing another 200 million euros. And in parallel with that, because this is in the public sector, and as you know, EBRD normally focuses on the private sector, but we are adaptable, we did everything we could through Ukrainian banks, many of them, to continue to feed money into critical companies in the country. For example, the agribusiness companies, which are absolutely essential for the country, but also in the pharmaceutical sector. You talked about transport with other countries. We are also working a lot on what is called the solidarity lanes, and so the connections with Europe in order to have an alternative to getting the grain out of Odessa, because you never know what can happen. You remember at some point what happened with the agreement. So it's very important to have a plan B. So what we do is that we are trying to finance the border crossings with Poland, but also with Slovakia in Uzhgorod, with Hungary, with Romania, and there are things to do in order to eliminate some bottlenecks in a place called Dornești, which is at the very north of Romania in Moldavia, and to connect it with Val du Siret, which is the Ukrainian part. Yeah, I think I got my names right. And we are also financing as much as possible the Polish ports, because they have also to adapt in order to be able to handle more Ukrainian goods through Ukraine. Same is in Constanța with Romania, and we are trying also to see whether a route could be created through Sulina, which is at the north of Romania, and which you can access from Ismail and from Reni. I will not say more because I could talk the entire day. I spent all my time on Ukraine, and this is what we are going to continue to do at EBRD.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pilloux. I will come back to the Ukrainian guests. Because there are two layers of the Mr. Pilloux's words. One is that the thing that we actually observe as a journalist right now, that there is a rising effort on the Western side to provide Ukraine with the financing that would be long-term and would be on the regular basis. That, you know, like we cannot live with, you know, like gathering money every month. You guys need to know that the money is going to come in month by month. So one question is it enough, bearing in mind the needs of the country waging the war? And second, what Mr. Pilloux was saying, we as a journalist in Poland and the Romanians are describing all the time, we all the time see the bottlenecks. We have our own problems with infrastructure over here in Poland and in Romania. Do you think it is enough, the effort that is being done actually to help Ukrainian economy? Because a lot of businesses relocated inside Ukraine, to the Western Ukraine, they are rebuilding over there. The Ukrainian industry is doing tremendous effort to build build in the capacity in the Western Ukraine. Is it enough that we are doing? Should we do more to create these connections?
Okay. Now, I think this is for sure a lot, but even if you look on the statistics, it's probably like still more can be done, right? And I think it's something what was well mentioned. I think it's very right. So we're talking about some macro-financial stability packages, right? Now, the situation is evolving, and I think it's way more important to support real economy and to reduce need for macro-financial support, like why optimize it, like in reducing unemployment, than like regularly rediscuss need for macro-financial support. So I think that's why a lot of focus should be done on real economy, and that's where private investment can play an important role. Now, on logistics, I think just look at the numbers, right? So yes, somehow like agricultural sector was partially supported, like Ukrainian steel sector and other important like heavy cargo flows went significantly down. So for sure, a lot of work can be done on debottlenecking logistics also to support like pre-war levels of exports.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll add to that. So from a macroeconomic perspective, so first of all, the question of is it enough or not? Obviously, we'd always like to have more, but there's certain indicators that you can look at to determine whether it's enough right now or not. So one telltale sign would be if our reserves were to dwindle the whole time. If we look at the central bank reserves, we were close to a currency crisis earlier last year. And then at some point we managed to get out, and then our reserves, central bank reserves, went back up again towards the 30 billion that they were before the full-scale invasion. So that's an indicator. If that's really shrinking constantly, then we're in trouble. And one of the reasons that we could get in trouble is if something worse happens. Now, what could it be? Another series of coordinated airstrikes. So I'll go back to my initial point. With all the importance that we have for the real sector, and obviously, work needs to be done. If we can't secure the skies properly, then there's no use in the real sector because it's going to get blown up. So what we need to have is completely watertight air defense, first of all. Right? To make sure that we can function and that we're not exposed to these downside risks the whole time, that then will become even more costly to everyone supporting us, because then we will need to avoid a currency crisis, and that will mean that it's not enough to have these 18 billion, but we need perhaps 20, another 20.
Thank you.
A very small intervention. What is absolutely crucial at the moment is to get the money out of the door, because you hear a lot of announcements on Ukraine. It's very nice, the announcements, but when the money remains on paper, it does not benefit Ukraine. It has to get out of the door. So at EBRD, for example, I'm happy when I see that the money is in Ukraine. When we sign a loan, it is on paper. This is extremely important. And at the moment, we are working with our Ukrainian partners in order to speed up, to accelerate as much as possible the disbursement of the money. Announcement and reality is different sometimes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Dietl, the Warsaw Stock Exchange actually as an institution is very, very active in helping Ukrainian entrepreneurs, helping Ukrainian economy, and you yourself, you are very devoted into the finding the proper solutions for the rebuilding Ukrainian economy, building the proper institutions in the future. So 2 questions to you. How do you understand the role of the financial institutions, such as Warsaw Stock Exchange, such as Polish capital market, Polish financial institutions, in helping Ukraine? And what, in your view, as well as a macroeconomist, needs to be done to help businesses, to help economy? What is the thing that we can do to strengthen this bridge about Mr. Sasin was talking about?
Thank you very much for the question and for having me here on this panel. By no means I'm expert in the military things and security issues, but there's also other side of the coin is the sanctions. So actually there's still quite vibrant production of missiles in Russia, and evasion of sanctions seems to not be that complex. So there should be a more commitment from the providers of tech solutions that they make sure that none of the high-tech products arrive to Russia. So, and it seems that the so-called Western world or transatlantic community is not that good at the moment. So there are 2 sides. Either you can bring more weapon armor to the Ukraine, or you can, or preferably both, or you can limit the production in Russia. Coming back to your question, indeed, I think this institutional aspect should not be neglected. We do some things with Ukrainian issuers. Before the war, the MSCI Ukraine, so index measuring the value of the Ukrainian public companies, 70% of this index roughly was the issuers on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. So we have very close relation with our clients, simply. And we have also some relation with the Financial Supervision Commission, and we draft some ideas with them. And we also work with the startups. We have a program for the relocation of startups. But what I would emphasize more even securing of the Ukrainian human capital. One thing is that when we have this co-working space or this program for relocation for the Ukrainian startups or tech companies, we are strongly envisage that it's a temporary thing. So they come here and that's great. We give them safe place to develop, but they should think about returning to Ukraine as soon as it's possible. The second thing, out of my activities as a CEO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange, I also believe that education matters. So there's a huge diaspora, Ukrainian diaspora around the world. I don't know the exact numbers. I think nobody knows, by the way, but it's a huge amount of people. And it's very important that the Ukrainian kids get Ukrainian training so they can get back to Ukraine, plug and play, and restore their education. It was, of course, great achievement in many countries, especially in Poland, that we were able to integrate Ukrainian students into Polish curriculum. But it's a temporary solution for me. For me, more important thing is that we organize the education for the Ukrainian kids around the world, even from the old diaspora, so those who left Ukraine many years ago, because there can be a momentum after the victory of Ukraine that the people might be contemplating returning. It's like great example is Ireland, when of course they have negative net migration. You know, there's this old joke that if you approach a policeman in Chicago, you should there can be either Irish or Polish. So, but now for last couple of years they have positive net migration because people from the US are moving to Ireland. So it is possible, and what we can learn, Alain can say more, that after the victory of Ukraine, or it was in the 90s in Poland, the window of interest into Polish economy and after the war to Ukraine is very actually narrow. So there will be literally a few years when the people will be interested in rebuilding Ukraine and so on. There will be hype on the Ukraine, but it's a very short period. People tend to forget, and that's why this human capacity has to be ready for the reconstruction of Ukraine, and also, last but not least, also facilitation of the private transfers from those who are working abroad to Ukraine. What is not that easy, my Ukrainian friends told me that sending money to Ukraine is apparently not that easy, but it's more task of the banks.
But just one additional question. There is a lot of belief that the Polish capital market the Polish financial institutions can be helping with channeling money going to Ukraine, helping with insurance for the exporters, helping with the insuring of transportations, in helping with managing the investments, as actually we do have the experience of reconstructing economy in the early 1990s. Do you believe in these that we can do, or is it kind of the wishful thinking among some of the Polish financial institutions?
Well, actually, when it comes to the institutional aspects of the rebuilding or building, actually in case of Poland, financial infrastructure, we're quite successful. Also, there's a number of Polish experts who were actually working in Ukraine in the financial institutions, because this was a success story on the banking side, on the capital market side, on many instances. And indeed, the challenge is that, of course, aid is very important, especially in the wartime and just after the war. But ultimately, it has to be Ukraine has to be rebuilt on the vibrant market principles. So indeed, using our experiences could be a good idea, and also learning from our mistakes. And I would be very keen on helping, and that's why we maintain dialogue with the Supervisory Commission of Ukraine on different aspects. There are also some small things, like small but important things, is like securing, for example, the data. It was especially first phase of the war. It was a major challenge to keep the financial market data somehow under Ukrainian control. So there are plenty of potential tiny operational issue which can matter now and later. And to this last part of your question, sorry I didn't address, it's a macro question. I'm still contemplating how to, there was a great initiative from Polish Central Bank that there was a limited amount of hryvnia you can convert into Polish zloty, and I'm still contemplating how to facilitate, I don't have a clear idea, but how to facilitate somewhat trading of hryvnia and some reliance or some in other words, dollarization of Ukraine is also not a solution, ultimate solution. So how to get the local currency also useful in the international setting, but I have no clear idea how to do it now.
Thank you. Mr. Skiba, last but not least, the question to you. How do you see the role of the banks and the financial institutions such as Pekao SA in helping in rebuilding Ukrainian economy? And what should we do to make the process beneficial for Ukraine and for European side as well?
Yes, this we heard a lot about military needs, but also infrastructure needs. But the third issue is real economy. This is the real economy means there is a need for Polish companies and Ukrainian companies to trade, because this is the important for Ukrainian companies to export goods, to have to grow, and this is the one of the source of revenues, source of vibrant future of Ukrainian economy. For Polish banking sector, this means that this is the question how to finance this trade, of course within the framework of Polish state, how to organize Polish companies to help them to find cooperators in Ukraine, for Ukrainians to find in Poland. This is a first step, yes, because this is the easiest way to make this cooperation between Polish economy, Polish companies and Ukrainians stronger as a factor that can make this economic situation in Ukraine stronger. But this is a long story. We heard about distributing money, grants, loans. This is important in Ukraine to have strong banking sector, because at the end banks are this kind of institution who are very important in competence how to allocate money within the economy, how to allocate in that way that this money will bring economic growth, not corruption, not money that will not bring new jobs. And this is important, yes, that this competence for Ukrainian banking sectors, banking sector to have this competence stronger, to increase, to learn. Of course, we see a lot of important. We heard a lot, and that we during last months talk a lot with our Polish colleagues from Ukrainian banks. We know how important it is to change law, to make mortgage loans advance in Ukraine, for banks to be much safer in terms of rule of law and so on. Because what is necessary for Ukrainian economy is to have very, very strong private, independent, competent banks, because this is a kind of very important distribution of money with the impact on the growth.
Thank you very much. I was warned with a smile, but still warned that we are actually running out of time in almost in this very minute, but I promised a question. So is there any questions from the audience at the end of the panel? One question or two. Is there anyone willing to? I see the hand raised. One request. We don't see you, so if you would be so nice to introduce yourself before asking the question.
I'm Marisa Lutsevich, I'm the head of Ukraine Forum in London-based Chatham House. We will be welcoming the UK and Ukraine, the Ukraine Reconstruction Conference on the 21st and 22nd of June. I would like to hear what perhaps Ukraine expects from that conference concretely that we can start working between today and June in terms of getting real money into real economy, if you have any suggestions. Thank you.
I will double the question, like what kind of the projects we need right now? What should we Mr. Sasin said that Polish companies are working on the projects that they can bring, but what are the projects we should be working on to help Ukraine? Professor?
No, I think it's a good question, right? And I think there's a real challenge is if we, and I started with this like amount of help needed, and if we compare amount of funds available, it's still not enough, of course. Right? So it's really like thinking through prioritization, projects which would be attractive for private investors to co-invest, but also which would have maximum impact for the economy. And I think it's something what should be done in the dialogue between private sector, Ukrainian state, and potentially donors. And this can be a good task for the preparation for London conference, probably.
Professor?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'm not going to speak exactly to the conference, but the needs are pretty clear. We have a fast recovery agenda that's mainly about infrastructure. Now it's also a lot about energy security. So everybody knows what the topics are there. We need more generators, we need more diversification, we need mobile power stations, we need renewal of the grids, etc. So that's really something that needs to happen before June. But there's other things on the agenda as well. So that's what I would add.
Thank you very much. And the very last question, Mr. Sadov, the mayor of Lvov, I see. Over here.
Thank you. Not question. Thank you. Thank you, EBRD, for support. Thank you, all Polish cities, governments. Last week, Lviv hosted 3 presidents, and President Duda made historical statement about Leopard. And for me, Polish community number 1. Thank you. Niech żyje Polska. Слава Україні. Дякую. Дякую.
Thank you very much. I think it's a good way to finish the panel. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini.